Hello, my fellow property investors. This is John with Real Property Management. Why are most landlord vendors not allowed to go into occupied properties? This is a question that we get from time to time, and it's one that I think we really need to spend a little bit of time understanding. First of all, we're running a professional property management company that's licensed and regulated by the Department of Commerce. And with that comes a lot of scrutiny in the work that we do, but also presents a lot of liability. There's liability from tenants, liability from vendors, and because of that, it's very important that we run our business like any other business, and that's on a very professional basis. If you took your car into the auto shop, the mechanic there wouldn't let you bring in your own parts and your own people to work on it. No different than a professional property management company should never let a landlord vendor that is not in our system into an occupied property. Way too much risk. Not beyond the risk, but there's also the communication challenges. Landlords that want to have their vendor come in, they don't communicate well with us. Usually that communication is done through the landlord. We don't a lot of times get the proper notice. We have vendors that show up unannounced. We have tenants that call and complain that a vendor was there without their knowledge, or that they entered their property without the proper notice. So these are all things on the communication and coordination side that causes issues, but then there's also the expectations. Tenants have rights, but they also have expectations that people will come in, they'll look good, they'll be professional, they'll show up on time. If they're running late, they'll be notified. All these things come with the communication that we provide to the tenant, but is not always in place when third-party vendors come to the property. Now, sometimes we do know that they're showing up, and if they're going into an occupied unit, we then have to send an escort. Because if you're not under the license, the insurance for our company, we have to be there. In the past, situations have occurred. Purses have gone missing. Items have gone missing. And even if the vendor didn't take the purse or take the item of value, the fact that that person was in there creates suspicion and from the tenant, and also can cause some liability from that perspective. So those are a couple of really important things. Not to mention things like, where does the vendor park? Are they going to park in the parking space, or are they going to be expected to park on the street? If there's no parking available, do they park on the grass? We've had that happen before. So these are things that we can't control because they're not under our contract. The second thing is our vendors are vetted. We don't just hire any company when there's a cost. The thought that perhaps a landlord could get a cheaper solution somewhere is just not practical. We spend $100,000 a month on maintenance, on plumbers and appliance companies and electricians and maintenance people. It's very unlikely that somebody's going to find a less expensive option that also has the quality and the performance that we need for these properties. Our promise to the landlord is that we're going to deliver the property back to them at the end of our relationship in as good, or in many cases better, condition than we took it. And we can't do that if we don't have control over the quality of those. And sometimes price just doesn't make the most sense. There's a lot of inexpensive providers out there that just do a poor job. And not to mention emergencies and other things. We've got to have these things in and out quick. If a tenant called and said they're out of hot water this morning, it is very likely that I'll have that hot water heater replaced by the end of the day. If there's a refrigerator failure, we'll have a refrigerator in there the next day, the very next day. These things, there's new laws now. 2024 went into place with tenants' rights. Also, hot water, refrigerators, air conditioning. These are all considered emergencies and have to be dealt with immediately. We don't have time to work with third-party vendors and figure out what the next move is there. Okay, finally, if we do have to go in and escort a vendor to a property, that costs money because you're paying for our time to go in and solve that problem with a third-party vendor. Many times those vendors take 2 or 3 trips to get done what we could have done in one trip. Big box appliance companies use third-party delivery companies. They use third-party installers. Many times the product shows up, but nobody's there to install it. They don't have the plumbing license to hook up the gas or to hook up the ice maker. So that involves 2 or 3 trips, again, causing disruption, missed expectations from the tenant, and then also additional costs by having our people going back and re-escorting those same vendors back for a second or third time in some cases. So what can we do about this? So first step is if you have vendors that you want for our company to use on your property, when you signed your property management agreement, you were sent a onboarding form, a profile, that asked if you had any vendors that you would like us to use with your property. So that'd be the first thing, is that if you're signing a management agreement, to go ahead and list any preferred vendors that you have. And the second is, even if you don't have a preferred vendor at the time you sign the agreement, you can always add those to us at a later date. What we can't do is, when a problem occurs, to try and solve the vendor selection issue at that time. When a problem occurs, we're going to move, we're going to take care of the client, being you, we're also going to take care of the the tenant, to make sure that all expectations are met. But what we won't do, and can't do and won't do, is try and onboard a new vendor, make sure that they have their workers' comp. If they fall off a ladder, guess who's getting the lawsuit? Not only you, but also us. And so, one of the reasons why we don't let vendors go in that aren't under our system. Liability insurance, W-9, taxes, all these things. And most importantly is to have them sign our vendor agreement. The vendor agreement sets forth all the communication standards, sets what they need to do to clean up afterwards, where they park their cars, all the things that cause problems at a job site. So be proactive, get ahead of it, get us a list of any vendors you want us to use, and we will use those vendors if they respond in the time frame that we need and that's required under the law, and we won't take care of that for you. But what we won't do, as I said earlier, is we're not going to try and solve this problem when there's a current work order that needs to be done. Hope that's helpful. If you have any questions, give us a call at the office. We're happy to talk through any issues that you have. Thank you and have a good day.